Hi, and welcome to this AI and C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework. Today, another video on the Azure AI Foundry part of the Agent Framework, and especially about the non-AI models versus agents. Because if we go to the portal and look at the model catalog, we will see that a bunch of other agents or LLMs other than OpenAI, which we have worked with more or less before until now, or we have used the dedicated Gemini, the dedicated Grok, the dedicated Anthropic portal where we put in some UIs for that. Up here we can actually use other models. So Grok is here, Phi is here from Microsoft, Llama is here, DeepSeek is here, Mistral is here. Those are the big ones. Gemini is not here. Anthropic is not here for competitive reasons, of course. But all these other models can actually be used against an Azure AI Foundry, but only in certain scenarios, and that is the reason for this video. So what I have done, for example, is that in my models here, I want to test out, find it here. It's actually in a different AI Foundry here I have. Let's go there and have a look at the models. And here I have a DeepSeek. So I don't have a machine that is powerful enough to run DeepSeek locally. You can of course get DeepSeek other places, but you can also try DeepSeek from Azure AI Foundry, which is the place I normally deploy my models, because then I have all my costs up in Azure. So if we go in the code, we can go in and see that we can ask a question. For example, what is the capital of the USA? And if we call it using the normal agent, meaning if we go in and use normal Azure OpenAI client, we can use GPT-4 Mini, and we can use DeepSeek without any problems. So of course we can use OpenAI, but DeepSeek, all the models that Azure AI Foundry supports are wrapped around, so we can use the Azure OpenAI client, because behind the scenes it's actually running the OpenAI specification. So if we set a breakpoint here, we need to set it as the startup project. Go. And we just go in and normal make a client and use ChatGPT-4 Mini as our system. We of course can get a response back that we have our answer back here. And so this was chat client with ChatGPT-4 Mini. So no AI Foundry as such, other than the model is hosted up in AI Foundry, but we use it as a chat client. And in the same manner, we can do exactly the same code and just take DeepSeek, despite it not being an OpenAI model, and run exactly the same type of code. And we will see, let's just move this over so we can see them side by side. And we get an answer back from DeepSeek in this case, where it gives a more elaborate answer, but that's just the LLMs. It's nothing to do with what model, what we are using here. But then if we try and use these two as agents, so if we look at ChatGPT-4 Mini, we can of course use the persistent client in order to make an AI Foundry agent, meaning up in the portal, our agents will go in here and be persistent. to log in again. There we go. So we can create agents up here and have them associated with the various LLMs. So if we do that with ChatGPT 4.1 mini here, we can do that. And we can then ask our question again by just getting a normal chat client from Azure Agent Framework and do our normal question and answer system. So that works. And if we go to the portal and refresh here, oh yeah, I have it a little confused because I'm using two different projects for the same scenario here. But here is my agent that I just made, and it was linked to GPT-4 4.1 mini, and it were in and did my thread. What was the capital? So everything works. And because I don't want it to link around, I will just go and use the persistent client to delete that agent again. But now I try the same with DeepSeek, which we saw works with Azure AI Foundry when we use it as a normal client. But if we do it like this and just make a persistent client again, and we make an AI Foundry agent, that works. We get an AI Foundry and a status 200 OK, which is not really something you can do up in the portal itself. And this is a kind of, in my book, this would have thrown an exception, because DeepSeek is not a valid model for persistent agents. And we can actually see that up here. If we go in and refresh, we get a DeepSeek here. But the second we look at it, you can see it says it's not a supported LLM, so we need to choose something else. And that is also the reason why, if we try to continue using this, again, this should have thrown an exception in my book, but they're not doing that. Either they don't have a good reason or it's a bug. But if we try to use it anyway, which we can still make a client and we can still run it, but what happens is we just get an empty answer back because it essentially didn't run. So just be aware of this, that despite someone comes to you or you look at it yourself up here, that, oh, you have a bunch of opportunities here. I will just gonna use Grok 4 in order to make my agent, so I have my persistent agent and so on. No, you cannot. You can run the basic chat client, which is good. You can test out all these models without needing to make registrations with the other models. I have no association with any of these other than Azure, and they're just hosting it on behalf of the various models. But the second you want to actually use Azure AI Foundry, the real benefit of Azure AI Foundry with the persistent agents and the hosted web search and code interpreter, you cannot, because again, you need to use the basic client. So this is just a model store. It's not associated with the real agent system, because if we go in and look and want to make a new agent with a new deployment, we are essentially only given ChatGPT or OpenAI clients. Might change in the future, but right now that's the only one we get. So again, this video is more like a warning that yes, you can begin to use the more exotic models if you want to, without needing to go to their specific systems or if they're open source, but you can't use them in AI Foundry by itself. So with that, thank you for attending. See you in the next one.